the Lions lose to the Packers at home on Thanksgiving. And a quick funny stat to throw out there, since the NFL AFL merger, when the Lions play on Thanksgiving with a waxing gibbous moon, they were 0-12 walking into yesterday's game, or it might be a waning gibbous, but either way, the chart showed me on Twitter. They were 0-12 walking into yesterday's game, and they are now 0-13 with that certain type of moon phase, and they play on Thanksgiving. And unfortunately, it was just an ugly game for the Detroit Lions, as we see Jared Goff now with a second straight game, multiple turnovers. We see the scoop and score that I didn't think was an actual fumble. I thought his arm was moving forward on that one, but nonetheless, good old NFL officiating. And, just back-to-back games where not only Jared Goff wasn't well, but the Detroit Lions are playing bad divisional opponents who, yes, have tested them. And now the Detroit Lions are losing in this game to the Green Bay Packers. Jared Goff with 3 interceptions last week, and a team that had 4 overall turnovers last week. They have 3 more turnovers this week, all off Jared Goff. He had the 3 fumbles, of course, the one, like I just mentioned, that was returned to the house on the scoop and score. But Green Bay did only get 6 total points off of those 3 turnovers. So Detroit does have to be grateful that it didn't get a little more lopsided and ugly as the game went on and the turnovers were unfolding. But should we be worried about the Detroit Lions after this game before we actually start, breaking it down? And I'm definitely going to say somewhat, because you got Jared Goff in the last 3 games with 6 turnovers off of him. You're struggling with bad teams in terms of the Bears, who you come back on in the 2-minute drill. We've seen the Bears do that this year. They're the Bears. They let the Broncos come back on them after really controlling most of the game. Justin Fields' first game back against the Lions had a great game, and they still let it slip away from them. And they really just haven't quite looked the same since they got blown out by the Ravens 38-6 about a month and a half ago. And now we see them in this game with the Packers, making Jordan Love play his best game of the year. The Packers, are not a good football team to me. They're really not. I don't expect them to be in any sort of running for anything. Now, we know they have talent on the team, and I like LaFleur. I'm not necessarily a fan of Jordan Love, but speaking of Love, he came out in this game. He played very well against a Lions defense that has played pretty good so far in this NFL season. And to know that Jordan Love played as well as he did against the Lions here, you just have to give credit to Green Bay and how they were able to prepare and really come in and just take control, of this football game. Jordan Love, though, with the first play of the game, big throw to Christian Watson, and that really just set the tone right out of the gate. Before you know it, the Packers are up 20-6 in the first quarter. And aside really from the final 5 minutes of last week's game for Detroit against the Bears, and then the last couple of minutes in this game against the Green Bay Packers, it's really been a horrific 2-game stretch for not only Jared Goff, but of course the Detroit Lions as well. Goff fumbling 2 times in that first quarter. Of course, we talked about the scoop and score. And even when Jared Goff did hold on to the ball in this game, it seemed like he was pretty off. Passes were wobbly. He wasn't super on target, comfortable, poised behind that offensive line that we're going to get to here in a second, that Jared Goff, is so used to. And they had a good first drive, I'd say, but after that, they just completely fell apart in this game up until the garbage time touchdown and where they came back. And I'm a little aggravated with Dan Campbell and some of his aggressiveness in this game, and just a couple of play calls that I feel like if they go Detroit's way, they're at least tying that football game after they have that 2-minute drill later in the first half. But at halftime, it was Packers 23, Lions 6. Jared Goff at that point, just at halftime, was pressured on 45% of his dropbacks, 9 of 20. That would be the highest he had faced with the Detroit Lions and the 3rd highest of his career. And you see Jerry Jacobs was really picked on by the Packers. Cam Sutton really didn't look like the cornerback one that he's used to playing like and being. And the reason that Detroit brought him in from Pittsburgh is because they needed help in that secondary to really remake this Lions defense that wasn't good from 2022. But the pass rush was absent again. No sacks on Jordan Love, and any quarterback, even, some of the not so great ones in the league, you give them time, they're going to be able to dice you up. We saw Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl when he did not have an offensive line. Tampa Bay came in there and absolutely ransacked him. And on the flip side, if you give any quarterback in this league time, they can 100% dice you up. And Jordan Love was able to come in and do that. Linebacking core with Detroit not necessarily covering the best either. They're struggling to cover as the season goes on. So Jordan Love, it was easy pickings for him. He didn't have to really work too hard in this one. Now, I'm still going to give him his credit, but the Lions did set Jordan Love up for success, as funny as that might sound with the take. But Detroit gives up 24 points per game, which is in the bottom third of the NFL. Now, they are 11th best in defensive yards per game. So that is pretty impressive to see Green Bay and Jordan Love again come in with that type of scheme and be able to escape with a Thanksgiving on the road road divisional win that this team is absolutely going to feel high off of, as the Detroit Lions, being one of the best elite teams in the NFL, may have to take that elite tag off of them after this game. But back-to-back divisional game, short week, it can kind of get you sometimes. I'm going to give them a little bit of slack here, but Detroit is 23rd in the NFL in sacks on opposing quarterbacks, which means they don't get to the quarterback the best, really. They've only got 23 sacks on the year, so that's 2.3 sacks per game. So you can say every 2 games they're getting to the quarterback about 5 times or so. But Jordan Love was comfortable. That reflected in the fact that there wasn't a lot of pressure on him. There was no sacks that Detroit was actually able to generate. He really made any throw, got whatever he wanted, was picking up blitzes. Midway through the second quarter, Green Bay had 8.6 yards per play. They were absolutely rolling over Detroit, and there was nothing that Detroit really was able to do about it. But after the Packers went up 20-6, there was only 9 points that the Detroit Lions would actually give up from that point forward. The defense gave up 23 points, which is the season average. And before giving up, the final touchdown after the late aggressive fake punch, where we're getting to fake punt that failed, which we're getting to in just a second, the defense hadn't given up, but what? 16, 17 points there. Now, Jordan Love did miss some throws, like I said earlier in this segment as well. So some of those big plays and even the touchdowns that he did miss, it could have came out more lopsided for Detroit, in terms of a loss for them. But obviously, the final score was what it was. Now, again, the scoop and score did not think that was an actual fumble. I kind of thought Detroit got hosed on that, but nonetheless, NFL officiating is going to be what it is. But they come out of halftime, very well in the third quarter, right out of the gate. 2 big plays: Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra, and they just come right out, score, hit that 2-point conversion. But Christian Watson is a big story of this game as well. 5 catches, 94 yards, actually a season high in receptions, ironically, for Christian Watson. 5 catches, 94 yards, and a touchdown. Speaking of that Packers defensive line, we know Jared Goff was hurried a lot in this game. 12 quarterback hurries and 3 sacks just from Rashawn Gary. The Packers had 27 pressures on the night, also with another 7 by Kenny Clark. So 19 pressures from 2 players, Rashawn Gary and Kenny Clark, making it difficult for for Jared Goff. And Goff was pressured on 61% of his 44 dropbacks on the evening. But you see, they got the 2-minute drill going. They engineered it towards the end of the game. And even with the 2-point conversion, they could have only been down by 1 and even tied it if they hit that extra point that they missed earlier in the game off the first touchdown. But the play of the game, and I know every Lions fan, every Packers fan, everyone that watched this game, there's one play that sticks out to you, and it's the fake punt that was failed by the Detroit Lions. What the hell are you doing pulling that off on your own 25-yard line, which ends up turning into a touchdown for Green Bay? And it was just 23-14 before that. You go down the field, put up your 8 points, you're down 23-22. And again, if you hit your extra point, Detroit, you're tying this football game. And this is why November and December football really matter. How are you playing situationally? How are you actually correcting some of the mistakes that you made earlier on in the game? Because we see Tua in the last couple of games as well have multiple turnovers against the Raiders and against the Jets. 2 interceptions and a fumble against the Jets in today's Black Friday games. Today's Black Friday game. Same thing with Jared Goff in the last couple of games as well, between Sunday and Thursday. When you get into this November and December football, that's really usually how you're going to play in the playoffs, or pretty close to it, kind of some version of that football. If you're turning the ball over 2 and especially 3 times a game, you're going home. You're not going to win those types of games. So that is going to be something for Detroit to clean up here. Goff misses on the 3rd and 5 throw just right before that. So the Lions were probably all out of sorts. They shouldn't have faced that 4th down. He overthrew Amon-Ra St. Brown, if I'm not mistaken, on the player there. Dan Campbell went for it 5 times on 4th down and didn't convert any of them until the game was basically decided with under 3 minutes to play. No one in the league goes for it more on 4th down than the Detroit Lions. But we know that's what Dan Campbell does. That's the aggressive type of football that he likes to come in and play. So giving the flowers to the Green Bay Packers here. Again, still don't think they're a good team, but they do grind out the divisional win on Thanksgiving. And Packers fans are going to be happy about this win. Detroit Lions fans, not so much. It's not an ugly loss. Or excuse me, it is an ugly loss. No loss is pretty, right? But it's not a good loss for the Detroit Lions. Your quarterback was hurried all day. He was pressured all day. Your O-line was not good. Your defensive line got no pressure and really no sacks. So your trenches were dead. Your quarterback play wasn't good. And your defense did good in the second half. But really, when you go up 20-6 and you just let a team get comfortable like Green Bay did, they might just be able to coast for the rest of the football game.